I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of East Central, being held on August 20th, 2020, being held at the East Central Student Services Training Center, in pursuant with Governor Abbott's order to local guidance. Madam Secretary, can we have a call roll?
Yes, sir. Del Brazil. Del. Victor Garza.
Here.
James Mulkey.
Here.
Monique Pressley. Steve Bryant.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Move on to item 2, prayer and pledge. Mr. Scott, who do we have tonight? Dr. Fuller. Dr. Fuller. All right.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that might affect our students, staff, faculty, and alumni, and friends of East Central. We ask these things in your name, amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. We'll move on to item 3, awards and recognitions.
The trustees would like to recognize our East Central School Foundation Board of Directors this evening. For that, I'd like to turn it over to Brandon for a few comments and introductions.
Thank you very much. The East Central School Foundation came in on sweet relief, we're like angels, because we do know that we are a little short on technology and getting into all the kids. So we ordered 2,000 more Chromebooks, more hotspots, and the foundation donated $135,000 to the cause.
So I'd like to comment on that. So, we found out pretty quick that we needed to turn some devices around. Texas Education Agency offered a bulk purchase program to leverage some of their buying power to be able to access some of these devices a little bit more expeditiously since they're in such demand. And they offered to split fund the cost. For us, that cost was, in the neighborhood of $350,000 that we did not have budgeted. And so I made one phone call to the foundation and just had a brief discussion, and within the week, they assembled. And here we are today, 2 weeks later, with a tremendous contribution in the best interest of the academic needs of our students and staff during this very rare and unusual time. We're just super grateful for the things that they always do year in and year out. I think we all saw the tremendous effort in standing up this year's gala and all of the effort that went into trying something a little different. The fruits of that labor were an all-time high in revenue. And so fortunately they were able to have the funds to contribute this amount to that expenditure. And I can't say enough about how timely that was and how beneficial that was to the district under these circumstances. And so I certainly want to acknowledge those
Let's
individuals.
introduce them. First, President Marie Baptiste from Massendale, and Gary Stevens representing the school foundation. Come on up.
I also want to just comment that the foundation gave $130,000, and we all know for a long time Barry Stevens has been a real big advocate of career technology and students who maybe aren't interested in a traditional university pursuit and are interested in becoming gainfully employed and getting credentials that have value. Barry's had his Excite Scholarship for many years, but this last year the city of San Antonio kind of stepped up and offered the Alamo Promise, giving an associate's degree free of charge to all students, which was really something that Barry's personal mission supported. But because that was not really the same need, Barry contributed an additional $5,000 on top of that $130,000. And so that's where we are today. So we just really thank you guys tremendously.
Well, we can have the superintendent and the board president.
I would like to say something real quick before we do that. I would like to also say thank y'all on behalf of the board, or the board trustees as well, it's not me, but I know how much work y'all do to raise that kind of money, and just really appreciate what y'all do for the district.
Absolutely, thank you all so
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
One request, can you hold this check for about 4 or 5 days so they're clear?
I just wanted to know if we were personally responsible if we signed the check, so.
Well, Barry, we can erase this and add
No.
to it.
I've already talked to Judy and I've told her that it's been taken care of. It might take a week or 10 days to get here because of the trust fund that it's in, so, got to dot the i's and cross the t's, and I think we've done that, so.
Gloria's here as well.
Oh, Gloria, please.
Hey, Gloria.
While Gloria's making her way, we just want to say thank you to the board. We're all very happy to serve our district and our kids. And to our esteemed colleagues, thank you all for what you do.
No, you're not.
Board.
Well, let's get everybody in there.
I succumb to peer
Come on,
pressure
Gloria,
on
take the
that.
mask off, he can't tell you who you are.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. All right. Deserve the kids will really enjoy that. Now, I can't see everyone working. You're right. Mr. Massengale.
Do you want to try that picture with us?
Oh, thank you so much.
And recycle.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is beneficial.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
I hear that phone was not working, got working. I hear that all week. Change it around. So, I think it's something that we all appreciate. Thank you very much.
So, before we move on to item 4, we do have another recognition tonight. There is a birthday girl in the house. Right? Can you stand up and say at least happy birthday, or we want to sing happy
Let's sing happy
birthday?
birthday.
You need some
Oh,
assistance?
my gosh.
All right. Let's sing happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ashley. Happy birthday to you.
Awesome.
I was going to embarrass somebody.
No way I'd rather spend my birthday. Birthday, I was 6 feet away.
Public comments. Do we have any public comments tonight?
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. We will move on to item 5, which is public hearing to discuss proposed budget and tax rate. According to board policy CE local, the annual public meeting to discuss proposed budget and tax rate shall be conducted as follows. Would anybody like to speak on behalf or ask any questions on the tax rate or speak on the tax rate? No? I think we're good. Awesome, that clears that out. Move on to item 6, superintendent report. Mr. Stalin?
Yes, sir, in your electronic packet, trustees, page 10 to 13, you'll see our latest report from Personnel Department as we wind down and start the school year. Happy to report that the majority of vacancies have been filled, and we've got a couple of teaching positions open that we're in the process of hiring for, as well as a few paraprofessional auxiliary positions throughout the district. But for the most part, we're whole, and be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like additional information about any of the information in this month's report, let me know, and we'll get back to you.
Anybody have any questions? Very good. Bill, are you good?
Yeah, good.
On item B, update 115.
Sir, trustees, in your electronic packet as well, you have the first reading of Board Policy Update 115, a very lengthy policy update. Staff will be working diligently across the district with respect to the departments that these policies directly associate with, reviewing the recommendations, and over the course of the month, taking your feedback as well, and bringing back next month for your consideration the amendments that staff is seeking your consideration and possible approval for. The policy update starts on page 14 and runs through page 793 in your electronic packet. So, happy reading, and let me know if you would like any more information about any of the recommended amendments, and if you have any input for us to include during the course of this next month.
Does anybody have any concerns or anything? Just call rolling.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to item C, upcoming events.
Not a lot of activity in your August and July, September calendar. Looking at the September calendar, two things that I just want to call your attention to is next month's regularly scheduled board meeting, which is on the 17th, tentatively back in this building and in a remote environment as it has been here in the last few months. Also, as you're aware, the TASB convention, September 30th to October 2nd, has also been converted to a full virtual conference. If you haven't already done so and you're interested, let Ms. Zotz know, and we'll get you registered for the conference. All I have, Mr. President? All I have on the update.
All right. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item 7, the action agenda. Item A, adjunct facility agreement and resolution, extracurricular status of the 4-H organization with East Central ISD and Atascosa County Extension staff. Mr. Scott.
Yes, sir. Trustees, we bring this to you every year, and essentially what the State Board of Education allows for through statute is for the board to consider naming qualified members of A&M AgriLife as adjunct faculty for the purposes of our students who participate in 4-H. If they are at activities with these adjunct educators, then they can be counted as school-related absences and not be counted as unexcused. And so this is a condition of our FFA students and 4-H students being able to participate in those programs. And again, this is something that the board must consider approval of every year. The adjunct professors there are listed along with their qualifications. They must have bachelor's degrees as well as be eligible for the teacher retirement system of Texas. So there are definitely some qualifications that have to meet in order to qualify as adjunct for the district. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. We're good.
Trustees, I recommend board approval that Atascosa County 4-H be approved as an extracurricular activity for purposes of youth participation in projects, events, and activities, and that the Atascosa County Extension Director and his or her designee who meet all necessary criteria be recognized as adjunct staff members and that students participating in 4-H and extension educational activities be counted in attendance for foundation school program purposes as presented.
We have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve Atascosa County 4-H be approved as an extracurricular activity for the purposes of youth participation in projects, events, and activities. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Victor Garza. Do I have a second? No. Do I have a second from Del Brazil? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item B has been removed. We'll move on to item C. Approval to amend TASB medical billing contract. Mr. Scott?
Trustees, the SHARS Medicaid billing program enables the district to claim services that students in our special programs receive, and that those service providers can document those services, and we can file for reimbursement through Medicaid if those students are receiving Medicaid. It's a very, very tedious and complex process, but there is significant revenue that the district expends and it qualifies for reimbursement annually. In recent years, we've been using TASB as our consultant to assist us with this. They have a pretty robust, smart software program that allows the service providers to document the services that they're providing in the time, and subsequently enables us to submit then reports to Medicaid in a very efficient manner. In addition to that, TASB offers a very tremendous value for the district. Specifically, each year, their fees are 6% of what we collect in the interim, which is usually about half of what we qualify for, so they'll get 6% of that. And then at the end of the year, we'll do a cost report analysis for the year. There's usually an additional $500,000 to $800,000 that we qualify for, and they don't take, even though they help us with submitting for that, they don't take any fees off of that. They're the only provider that we've come across that does that. So definitely a cost-effective option. We had, in the last couple of years, only requested the board to approve a one-year contract, so that each year we would have to come back to the board. It was kind of a trial period for us, because we had only recently begun using TASB again for this service. We have found them to be very reliable, and again, at a good value, and so now we're bringing to you what is more common for this service, and that's a 3-year contract. So this year, what we're bringing for board consideration is a 3-year contract for the TASB Medicaid billing contract, as I discussed, and I'd be happy to answer any more detailed questions about that program and how it works.
Anybody have questions?
Mr. President, I recommend board approval of amending the term of the contract with TASB from a 1-year renewal to a 3-year renewal as presented.
We have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve amending the term of contract with TASB from the 1-year to the 3-year renewal. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Monique Priestess. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second from Del Brazil. All in favor?
Aye.
All
No.
opposed? Motion carries.
Well, it's actually me.
You?
No, I seconded.
All right, we're official now. Item D, discussion and adoption of the 2021 proposed budget. Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, trustees, at last month's board budget workshop, we went into great detail about the state of school finance as it relates to the after effects of COVID-19, as well as some of the unforeseen expenditures associated with COVID-19. And I think that what we landed on was a clear understanding that the district is operating on a very streamlined budget, that we have essentially all of our basic needs in terms of revenue, but that there really isn't much room for anything beyond those basic needs that exist in the budget. A few things that I want to point out as we, prior to proposing or presenting the budget here this evening, is that it has been recommended that we anticipate an ADA reduction of 1.5% enrollment, which is a significant dollar amount that we are anticipating not generating due to a decline in ADA. Due to the structure of House Bill 3, while our property values increase nicely in our community, there's a property tax cap as it relates to revenue that districts can generate. And so we're not really seeing the additional revenue because of property value increases in our community because of the way House Bill 3 is structured. In addition to that, as we'll talk about in a minute, in our amended budget as well, since COVID-19 caused quite a significant amount of grief in the economy, we've seen that the district's investments somewhat tank in the spring, and we anticipate the revenue we generate from our investments to not be what they typically are. And then lastly is the previous item that we discussed, the SHARS Medicaid billing, because we're not providing as many services, and had it in the spring anyway, in our amended budget, we're seeing less revenue from SHARS reimbursements for the amended budget, which we'll talk about in a moment, but we're projecting less revenue from Medicaid reimbursement this upcoming year in our budget. So those are all pretty conservative ways to build a budget that we feel we need to be really conservative in building as it relates to revenue. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Judy to share kind of where we landed on our proposed budget this evening.
Okay, you want me to go up there or here?
So trustee, she'll just, you can stay right where you're at, Judy, but if you're comfortable.
Oh, yes.
You have that document, it's a yellow colored, or on the first page, at the bottom, it says 2021 proposed budget. And so in that document, on the first page, is where Judy will start.
Okay. The first page that you see in your yellow sheet is the proposed budget, and it kind of consists of three funds: the general fund, the special revenue, and the debt service. And that's the only three funds that y'all have to approve. And basically, this is really the only sheet you are approving. There's other sheets behind it, but it's just for your information, for you to review and to see where we're at on different areas. But this is the sheet that you are approving. And on the proposed budget, like Mr. Toscano said, we're a very conservative district. We don't want to say we're going to have more money than what we are going to come in. We'd rather have more money come in than what we thought. And so that's kind of what was done. We had to reduce our ADA, and we only reduced it by 1.5 because going any more than that would have been really dramatic decrease. So we're going to hope that it only goes 1.5, plus I know TEA is supposed to have a good faith effort of making it whole, but we felt like we needed to be conservative of using 1.5. And surprisingly, we finished our tax collections very good. I was afraid that we might not because of COVID-19, but we did collect well on our taxes. So we have projected that we will not collect 100%, but I used about 98, and that is kind of giving us a little bit more money to help. But what has really hurt is our investments. 2 years ago, in 18-19, we ended the year and we had $818,000 we made in investments. We'll end this year with just a little over 400,000. And we're blessed that we ended with 400,000 because that was September through March, some of April, where the interest rates were a little bit higher. Since then, they've been very bad every month. So our projections for next year is I took the worst case scenario, kind of what we've been getting right now, and I looked at we would probably only get about $85,000 to $90,000 in interest income. And I'm hoping that maybe it will turn around and get a little bit higher, but that's a conservative projection for interest. I also had to reduce our revenues from football games and different athletic events. I reduced that. I reduced the SHARs, like Mr. Toscano said. And there's other little miscellaneous revenue we get that I kind of whittled at and was realistic that, hey, it's not going to happen. And so some of those were not big dollars, just a little. But again, it takes all of it to make the budget for the revenue. Now for the expenditures, we only put, for right now, $500,000 in the facility improvements. We ended with a lot more last year because we were finishing up projects and doing projects. So we put in $500,000. I put in additional money to take care of technology. Was careful about what we put in as far as each line item and each function, and kind of made sure that I didn't have any fluff in any different function. And so with all that being said, we're going to have a deficit again on paper of $1.6 million. And again, like I said, this is on paper, not actual. Because ECentral has been known, and especially our budget stewards, they don't spend 100% of their budget. And so we have to budget like they're gonna spend 100%, but they don't spend 100%. So if they only spend 97, we will come out with a balanced budget, or we will even have made a little money, depending if our revenue comes in, which I'm more conservative on the revenue because I know that will be coming in like that. But it looks on paper that we will have a $1.6 million budget. But again, because of our budget stewards and not spending 100%, we will come out probably with not having to hit our fund balance unless there's some major projects that come in that we have to use that money for. Now, the special revenue, child nutrition, their revenue is less than their expenditures, and a lot of that has to do with the CEP, and because of COVID-19 and people not here to buy lunches and whatever. Luckily, child nutrition has a very healthy fund balance. And in fact, fund balance for child nutrition is, if you have more than a 3-month average, you have to send a letter to TDA and explain what you're going to do. And we've always had to do that. So some of their excess fund balance will be used to help pay their deficit that we think next year will be around $300,000. Again, they don't spend 100% of their budget, but this will help lower the over expenditure that they have with their fund balance. And the last one y'all have to approve is debt service. And debt service, we refunded the bonds, so we got a little bit of break on that. We went down on our appropriations for the bonds. And so it looks like we might be able to put around $500,000 into the fund balance for INS, and which will help the district in the long run. Because the more we build up that fund balance for INS, the better we will get for a bond rating, and also we might be able to pay off some of our debt earlier. Victor had called about doing that maybe for next year, and we're going to review what he wants to do and see how that would go. But with growth that we might have coming over the next few years, the best thing for us to do is kind of pay off some of that outstanding bonds, so that way in case we have to do a big bond issue, we won't have the capacity to do the bond issue. So it looks like we might go and have an additional $500,000 towards the fund balance for debt service. So the total amount of our expenditures is $108,472,074, and our revenue is $107,058,076. So in total of those three funds, it's $1.413998, and you notice we don't have construction there anymore. We don't have any construction funds left. Any federal programs or any state programs, grants, are not approved by the board, so that's the reason they're not listed. But if you look through the pages that are attached, you will see the percentage that we spend on different functions in the general fund. You'll see the per pupil cost that we have based on an estimated average daily attendance, and it compares against Amended, and it's just really for information. Do y'all have any questions?
Anybody got any questions? No? We're good? Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I recommend board approval of the 2020-2021 district budget as presented on the slide.
We have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve the 2021 school district budget as presented. I have a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Garza. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second from Claudia Barrentos. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item E, discussion and adoption of the 2020 tax rate. Mr. Toscano?
Yes, sir. Trustees, tonight we're bringing to you the proposed tax rate for your consideration. As you very well know, the total tax rate is made up of two components, our maintenance and operations rate, as well as our interest and sinking rate. What we're bringing to you tonight for your consideration is a maintenance and operations rate of 92 cents, 0.926 to be exact. That's down from 97 cents last year. And an interest and sinking rate of 21 cents or 0.216 to be exact, which is down from 24 cents last year, bringing to you tonight a total tax rate of $1.14 or $1.142 to be exact. And what I have in your miscellaneous packet is just a historical set of ECISD tax rates broken out by local maintenance and interest and sinking from 2015-16 until tonight. And I wanted you to have this information because we have historically and certainly since this time, over this time period, been among the lowest in tax rate in Bexar County, historically second to the lowest. And we do believe that what we're presenting tonight not only presents a tremendous value to the taxpayer of the East Central community, because it's dropping the tax rate nearly 7 cents, the total tax rate, but it also continues, we're very confident will continue to be easily among the lowest total tax rates in Bexar County. And so we'd be happy to answer any additional questions. Judy, is there anything to add to that?
One thing we need to add is on the maintenance and operation rate is, you know, we're able to get 4 golden pennies, and this year we were able to get 5 golden pennies, one more, and that's included in here. And we're able to do that as long as we have a unanimous vote by the board.
All right. Anybody have questions? All right, good.
Mr. President, I recommend board approval of the tax rate levy for 2020 of $1.142 per $100 of assessed value as per the attached order. Said rate is to be comprised of 0.926 cents for maintenance and operations and 0.216 cents for debt service. This year's proposed tax rate does not exceed the effective tax rate.
superintendent to approve the tax rate levy for 2020 of 1.142 per hundred assessed value as per task order. Said rate to be comprised of 0.926 of 1 cent for maintenance and operation and 0.216 of 1 penny for debt service. Do I have a motion?
No move.
I have a motion from Mr. Victor Garvin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Tony Freeses. Thank you, Dale. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item F, 2019-2020 amended budget and information. Mr. Stone?
Yes, sir, trustees, also in your miscellaneous packet, you have the amended budget, which is very similar to the proposed budget. This is on solid white paper. And again, we'll look at the first page for starters, before Ms. Judy presents the amended budget. A few things that I want to point out that we discussed as well at our budget workshop is that this amended budget ultimately is not finalized until we have our annual audit. But as we bring it to you tonight, we've had to make considerations for some declines in ADA, some considerations for declines in investment revenue, as we've discussed this evening already, some declines due to some unforeseen COVID-19 related expenditures, as well as declines in athletic gate receipts, ticket sales, which were curtailed through the March closure. As far as expenditures, we do project that we'll spend, or at least for the purposes of what we're bringing to you tonight, we have to anticipate that budget stewards will spend 100% of the allocated budget. Again, as Judy shared earlier, we historically run around 95 or 96%, but what we're bringing to you tonight in the amended budget is an assumption that we'll spend 100%. If we were to spend 100% with all of these other conditions that have affected our budget through the spring, we're bringing you an amended budget tonight that is going to show a shortfall of $4 million. Now, what could impact that is if we end up only spending 95 or 96%, that will make that up. And we do believe that at the end of this year's audit, realistically, it'll probably be a wash, and it won't be upside down and need to hit fund balance. But we felt like tonight we needed to bring you the worst case scenario, given the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in, to make sure that there are no surprises come audit time, and that things will only get better in that report than what we're sharing with you this evening. So, Ms. Judy?
Okay. Just like the budget, you're only going to be approving this amended budget. And when you approve this budget, then what I'll do is I'll adjust the numbers on the general ledger so it will balance for the auditor. And again, this is based on that everybody spent 100% of their budget, which we know that they will not do. But we have to put that in to cover ourselves. Because one thing you don't want to do is not have enough money in a function, like function 11, and you go over by 100,000, you will get a nasty letter from TDA, and you will also get it in your audit report, and we don't want that. So that's the reason why we're real careful with our functions. Now, it looks like we're gonna be in the hole $4 million, but I was looking at where we're at right now, and we only have 10 more days of expenditures, and basically, I tell everybody, unless it's an emergency, don't put it in. I know I have to do accrued payroll, I have to do the other things that go along with closing out for the year for the general ledger, but I'm looking at right now that we might only have spent 93 to 94% of our budget. So if we stay within and only spend 95, we will not hit fund balance at all. So I'm very positive that if we do hit fund balance, it will be very small, or we won't hit it at all because of everybody being super careful on what they've been expending. I know we've had some additional expenses that we've had for COVID. Some of those will be reimbursed, a percentage of them will be. That will be what FEMA decides to reimburse us. And I know that the other grant, the CFR grant, will also reimburse some, so that will help. And so basically, I feel like when it's all said and done, and when Coleman Harkin comes here in October, that we will not hit fund balance, or only hit fund balance for a small amount for local. Now, special revenue, child nutrition, they are going to be hitting their fund balance for more than they usually do. But again, they have that excess money that they need to spend anyway. And part of their reasons was because of COVID-19. They didn't serve as many meals to the students. And in the summertime, we had a count, but some of the money didn't come in. You have to work with TDA on getting your reimbursables. And Nancy and Stevie do an excellent job of trying to decide what TDA is going to reimburse for and not. But luckily, and we're one of the very few districts that we're very lucky that child nutrition has their fund balance. Several districts I know of, their locals haven't picked that up. So we are very blessed that they have watched their budget over the number of years, and it has come in at an opportune time to promote their program, to provide the services to their kids, and to do everything they need to do in COVID-19, and they were able to do it all on their own. And then on the debt service fund, we look like we're going to get about another $1 million that we'll be able to put into debt service. And a couple of the reasons for is we never know when we build the budget if we're going to get the EFA and EBA money. You know, when you have that, they don't really tell you you're going to get it until they do all these little formulas and they have money left over, and they'll say, oh, here's $293,000 that belongs to East Central. We will take it gladly, but I don't want to budget for it. So that helped increasing the fund balance. We also had the refinancing of the 2010 bonds, and that helped a little bit. And it also helped, again, like I said, our taxes came in better than I thought. I really was very worried in March that we weren't going to get the money because we had so many of our big taxpayers not paying half of their bill. But I will be happy to report that every one of those top 25 taxpayers paid all of their money that they owed us. So that helped on the debt service fund. So we should get about another $1 million to go into debt service. And so, and I like the other budget, the pages behind are just for information for you to review. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be glad to respond.
This daily attendance, is that based on 100% attendance, this figure?
No, it's based on our average daily attendance for our school district, and because they don't pay us by enrollment, they do it by average daily attendance. And I think last year we ended up with like 9,200 on our average daily attendance. So, you know, and we all preach and say, get the kids to school, get the kids to school, because it affects our funding. The more the kids are at school, even though you think this is not right, they should pay on enrollment, which has been a big thing that we've asked for them to pay based on enrollment, because even if they're not there, you are heating the building, you're paying that teacher, you're doing all these expenses whether that student is there or not. But the way TEA does the funding is based on if the student is in the classroom.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Mr. Mulkey, because that's actually going to be one of the legislative priorities that we'll advocate for, is for the state of Texas to consider funding schools by enrollment, not average attendance. So we're one of the very few states in the nation whose schools, whose public schools are funded by average attendance as opposed to enrollment. So for example, we have approximately 10,200 students enrolled. We have on any average day 9,200 that show up. We get funded for 9,200. What we know is those that don't have good attendance, usually there's a whole bunch of other needs that the district is still servicing. And in the end, we're still accountable for their learning and their achievement and those outcomes. So they're actually students that require a lot more of the district's resources to serve and get them across that line, but you're not funded for it. So in our argument, you need to be funded for every kid you serve because you're accountable for their outcomes. So fund us for everyone and not taking a position of maybe greedy. We do believe you need extra funding for those that are struggling for all kinds of reasons to come to school, but at least give us a foundational funding. And right now, we don't get it unless they're here on a regular basis. So that makes our budget pretty challenged if we can't get kids to school every day. And there's variables we can't control. If they don't come to school every day, we need all of us working together at home and at school to make that happen. So just wanted to take a moment to point out, you'll hear me talk more about it as we ramp up to the next legislative session. I'm going to try to definitely advocate for ECISD's point of view to consider enrollment funding versus ADA funding, but try to leverage any organizations that I'm part of as a body for a louder voice, if you will, to try and really push on that issue. So I've been working with Raise Your Hand Texas, been working with Bear County School District Coalition, as well as the Regional Service Center, regional school districts to try and really push on that issue together. So hopefully all of our local delegation representatives are carrying that, that forward, hopefully, in the next session.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Thanks again, Ms. Barnes. Appreciate it. President, I recommend board approval of the 2019-2020 amended budget as presented. We have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve the 2019-2020 amended budget and administration as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Victor Garza. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Steve Brunner. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You hear that, Ms. Dale? Awesome, thank you. Motion carries. We'll move on to item G, 2021 employee compensation schedule. Mr. Scott?
Mr. President, trustees, this year's 2020-2021 employee compensation schedule is found in your electronic packet on page 767. As we discussed at the budget workshop, unfortunately, it's not going to bring with it a salary increase for employees. Keep in mind that the board did approve an optional healthcare consideration for employees. I'm happy to report that nearly 900 employees migrated from TRS to the Cigna plan, and in most cases saved anywhere from $500 to as much as $3,000 for the year for comparable health care with some additional benefits. So in a year when we couldn't provide salary increases by way of health care, we are really helping a large number of households as far as our employees go, to the tune of nearly 900. So we're very pleased with that. But in addition to that, we did have a salary study done by TASB, and they made several recommendations. I'm happy to report that the majority of their recommendations were that our salary structures and our compensation packages, as well as our salaries within those compensation packages, are very competitive and aligned in the market across job classifications and roles. There were a few recommendations that we included in this year's compensation schedule to ensure that there was alignment to the market, and Judy will touch on those here in just a moment. And then lastly, we'll be including in the compensation schedule some language that will enable the board to consider a mid-year retention bonus if revenue at that point in the year enables us to propose that for board consideration. A couple of years ago, we know we found ourselves in that situation, and the board was able to provide every employee, with the exception of administrators across the district, a $500 one-time payment. And it was in December when we were able to do that, as they broke for Christmas, they were able to get a little something. I believe this year our hope is that we're able to do something. We don't know what that amount will be. We're just grateful that we can do anything. And our hope is also to include all employees, including administrators this time. So, we'll keep our fingers crossed and praying that things look good at that time of year, and we'll be able to come with you with a recommendation there. So, with that, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Burns, touching on a few of the high points that I didn't hit.
Okay, I'll be glad to. On our teacher salary schedule, there was no increase, and the teachers did not get a step raise. So whatever they made last year is what they made this year. Talking to the other school districts around Bear County, I was very proud of the superintendents. They all stuck to no salary raises for this year for the whole city or the whole county. And that helped us tremendously, because lots of times we're having to compete. North side, oh, I'm going to give a raise, or they tell us, no, we're not going to give a raise, then they do. Then everybody has to jump to keep up with them. But this year, with the efforts of the superintendent, made it very clear that none of them were going to get raises, and they followed that. So I commend the superintendents for doing that, because it helped all the districts in preparing their budget. And like Roland said, we did make some changes in our compensation. One of the changes that we did for admin pay plan is we used to have 2 pay grades for directors, 104 and 107. And that was done from many years ago. And the admin council talked, and really, if you were a director, you were a director, you were a director. So what we did is we combined and we put a pay scale for all the directors, because they all do an equally job and they all have big responsibilities. So I will tell you, I got more nice comments from directors thanking me, and it didn't mean a pay raise. They were thanking me, just moving them up on the same pay grade that the others. And it wasn't me doing it. It's like I told them, it was the administrative council and superintendent. So nobody got a raise because they moved up a pay grade, because they were all making above the minimum. And we did tell them what that does mean down the road, whenever we're able to give raises, that they will make a higher salary based on midpoint. So they were very appreciative of that. We did move Donna Solarsik on the admin pay scale. She's doing the job of an admin as a business manager, and I felt strongly, and so did Mr. Toscano, that she needed to be have the duties and responsibilities of a business manager and be on a pay grade admin. But that was about all that we did on that. The instructional support pay plan, we were good with TASB. They said we were fine. We were in market value. And the same way with the professional support plan, which is like your clerks, your secretaries. We were able to be good with the market value on all of them. So there was not really any changes. We only made one change. We moved the PEAMS attendance clerk. She's doing a tremendous job being the backup for the PEAMS supervisor. So we moved her up one pay grade. And then the biggest change was auxiliary pay plan. And TASB did say we were within market value, but there was an issue with the custodians who are at the high school, and Linda brought it to our attention that she's having a difficult time to get custodians to want to go to the high school, because that's a big campus, lots of kids, lots of duties. And, we heard what she said, and we really believed that she was 100% right, that we needed to do something to encourage a custodian to say, I want to go to the high school. I don't mind going to high school. So we just bumped them up a pay grade. Now, some of those will get a little bit of a raise because they would be below minimum. And when we did that, well, then we had to move the assistant head up one so he wouldn't be on the same pay grade with the regular custodians. But that's basically what our main auxiliary pay plan. And I think it will help Linda on her securing high school custodians. and it'll get them a little bit more money for doing a very big job. Technology pay plan, there was no changes. Now, transportation, what we did on transportation, we didn't increase their daily rate for the routes. But what we allowed is they get incentives for each year they're here. It's just an additional quarter. If you're here 2 years, you get 25 cents. If you're here 3 years, you get 50. We didn't want to freeze that. For 25 cents extra that you're paying these people, it's very appreciative, and and it doesn't cost a lot of money, so we let their incentive program go for the bus drivers and the monitors. And then on page 779 is the possible retention supplement, and we found that the best thing to do on this is to put that in there, but not, and to have some parameters that you had to be hired by October 1st. You had to still be employed by January 31st. That was the parameters. We did not put in there what you would get, and also that you had to be a TRS eligible employee, because that way if you were part-time for just a little bit during the week, you weren't eligible for that. But we want to do it that way because of the fact we wanted to make sure we used the right amount. We didn't want to come up with an amount of a 2% and say you're going to get 2%, or you're going to get 500, or you're going to get 1,000, and find out we can't afford that. So we felt like it was better just to wait, and then whenever we feel like what the amount of money will be, then we'll come to the board and we'll discuss it with y'all, and then that's what we'll be using. If we can do this, if everything starts working out good, then I am very hopeful that we'll be able to do this for all of our employees. And we're still going to give the attendance and incentive bonus to our bus drivers, monitors, custodians, building mechanics, and grounds people, and child nutrition. We started it last year, and we went through we went from September to, it was almost March, February, and it was really a good program. They were really coming to work, and it was very cost effective. But then when COVID-19 hit, we ceased doing that program because we were already paying them for not being at work, so we did not continue the program. But we want to start back up this year because we want to see the same good results we got last year. And then on our extra duty stipend, we did not hardly change any of them. The main one we changed was our LSSPs, the stipend, because previously the stipends for LSSPs was $2,000. Well, LSSPs right now are golden employees because the state of Texas is being sued by the federal government because of the services that they did not perform for special ed students, and they have to get out there and do all the testing and everything that LSSPs need to do. So now LSSPs are in more demand than speech therapists. And so we have lost a lot of our LSSPs going to other districts because they're paying more. And so we increased our stipend by $3,000. We are giving them $5,000 to stay at East Central. We're going to have contracted LSSPs next year, like most school districts are doing, again, because of the supply and demand of LSSPs. And the only other thing that we changed in additional compensation is we increased the homebound amount to $35 an hour. And we made sure that we put in here about the buyback at retirement, so nobody could say they didn't know what it was going to be, so it's in there. And that is about it of the salary compensation. I know as a longtime employee of East Central, it's very hard for me to tell our fellow employees that you don't get a raise. That's kind of one of the hardest things you have to do. Only thing harder is when you have to choose the people you have to let go because of the way the situation is with the funding. And we felt like by doing this, we might not have to have those difficult moments with employees and asking them to leave because we don't have them the money and have to do a RIF. So our compensation schedule is what it is, but it's fair. It's what we can do right now, and hopefully next year or the year after we can get a little bit better on track. But I don't feel extremely bad about not giving a raise once we saw that we were in market value. It would have been really hard not to give a raise and find out that we were undervalued for all of our employees. So do y'all have any questions?
I do. What happens to, for instance, we want things to go back to normal, but if we don't have extracurricular activities or needs for, we don't have athletics or anything, do those stipends still get paid?
So for this year, what we've asked the athletic department to do is create job duties and descriptions for every coach. And so the athletic department has put together duties that every coach will do in the event that their seasons are curtailed or canceled. So these are other needs that the campus may have or that the district may have that matches the skills that these coaches have. So we may be talking about academic programming, we may be talking about mentoring, being able to design Big Brother, Big Sisters kinds of programs, homebound or home instructional services, and the list goes on. And so because of the uncertainty associated with that and because employees' salaries, they plan for those salaries to start the year to budget their household income. And so early on, we decided that provided that we can generate, valid and necessary tasks for them to do and deliverables for the district that we need to have done, then we would pay their stipends, provided they did that in the event their sports are curtailed, seasons are curtailed or canceled. Now, is that sustainable long-term? What I've told them is no. So hopefully this is a one-year deal, and we don't find ourselves in this situation next year, but I can't guarantee them that I would find it reasonable to continue to do this beyond this year if, we're in the same situation. So we would probably be revisiting the conversation around stipends. But they would have enough lead time to know, if COVID were to go beyond this next year, that we might find ourselves having a different conversation. So felt like it was the right thing to do, and so it includes that in this budget, that their stipends are there in the salary book, and their contracts include those supplemental payments, compensation. But they also understand that they're not going to sit at home if volleyball season's canceled and not perform deliverable duties and meaningful services to students and to campuses across the district to justify that.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any idea how much in attendance bonuses we paid last year? I was in this program for
Yeah, for the first couple of quarters.
And we paid probably right around $60,000.
Okay. That's pretty much spread across the entire eligible population?
Probably, yes, all around it. And it could even be a little bit more than 60,000 of what we paid between the bus drivers, the monitors,
Okay.
the child nutrition, the building mechanics, and the custodial.
So
It was a very good program. They were
Yeah.
really wanting it.
So at mid-year evaluation, I have it broke out by job classification and how many payments. So for every single driver, monitor, child nutrition worker, grounds, et cetera, and it broke out for up to the point where COVID shut down the program. And I can send that back out to everybody in an email, just so you can see it. But again, as Ms. Burns said, we were finding it to be a really positive incentive. We saw a lot less attendance-related issues. We saw a lot less performance-related issues because it requires good attendance. It requires, no write-ups, good performance. And if they meet that criteria, they get that $300. And so, the need for subs, productivity delays, we found improvements in all of those areas. And so we were really optimistic that it was being received by employees is, something worth doing my best for, quite honestly. And so a good percentage of folks qualified. And those that didn't the first time, really ramped up their efforts because they didn't want to miss out the next time. I don't know that all employees that first quarter realized how good a benefit that was. And when a lot of folks in their department got it, they woke up and we saw their response the second quarter in terms of, again, their attendance, tardiness, and performance. That's what you have to meet. You have to meet those standards that we've set out to qualify. If you don't, you don't. And so we intend, it's in our compensation plan this year to reinstate it this quarter, this fall.
Okay, so you feel like the cost, the benefit outweighed the cost, we paid less in substitutes than we did in.
Substitutes and in productivity, operational efficiency, absolutely.
Okay.
Very small cost for what we got in return.
What would be the impact if we change the retention payment, the end date from January the 31st to December 15th? Because right now you've got that retention bonus scheduled to be, having to be hired on or before October the 1st and still be employed at January the 31st. That tells me we're not going to pay it until after January 31st.
Yes, it'd be after January, because by that time, we will really have seen how our tax collections are going, how our ADA funding is going. That's the reason why we wanted to wait until like February or March. We'd have a better idea of what kind of money we got in for our revenue.
So Judy, you think, unlike the last time where we were able to get that disbursement in December, I think now that I'm recalling, we were able to budget that amount and put it into the proposed budget. But I think with in this particular case, we don't know if we're gonna have the revenue, so we have to wait until that time frame, I guess. I guess
See,
that's.
with like Roland was saying, at that time, we had the money in the budget that we knew we could pay. And so we tried to do it before Christmas, and it worked out good. We did a separate payroll, they got a separate check. But this time, December would be just too close. It would be a hard time to do because we really would not know how our taxes are coming in, how our ADA is coming in. That's the reason why we felt like it would be better to wait until early February, March sometime to make that disbursement, if it's available.
Yeah, I guess that's the only way for us to know what our revenue's gonna look like, tax collections in particular. But let's take a closer look at it.
I think you'll also know what we're looking at for expenditures, the percentage of expenditures out of last year's budget, the 19 to 20 budget. If we've not hit fund balance, then if we've not gone into fund balance, then we might have some funds available at that time.
Okay.
I'd like,
You take a look at it.
Yeah, we could look at it and see how it
I hear
goes.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
We might be able to do it out of fund balance if that's in good shape.
exactly.
Okay.
so we can get it by
So they get it, your preference, what I'm hearing is, your
December.
preference would be for us to disperse it in December if we can do it.
Yeah,
Okay. We'll look at it and get back to the board.
okay, if you would. please.
Okay.
Now, is there anything in this amended budget language, if we adopt it as it is, that would preclude you from being able to do that if the funds were available?
No, because of the fact is, we don't know exactly what's going to be spent.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know what we'll have left. But also, if you take an action item of what you want to do, we would be able to do it. Because the fact is, we also have in here that the rule would be from employed October to January. And we would need to take it back to the board and say, we're not going to use that. Y'all are going to adopt it.
Yeah, so the only change we would have to make, only thing we'd have to change is the employment period to qualify.
Right.
We may just have to move it back, which would be, we can actually, if we can pull this off, we'll just look back at what that employment period criteria was the last time, and we can amend it to that.
Yeah, okay.
So once we know what that, so the audit's in,
The audit, we're hoping is in October this time. We found out that we're going
Okay.
to have mostly a virtual audit, so we're going to see how that works. So, but it should be in October.
okay, so if we get that the audit in October, then in November, we can bring that amendment to this timeline back to the board if we think we've got the funds to do it, post-audit, and then we'll let the board know at that time. And if it works out that way, consider it as a possibility for this person. Okay.
And we already know how to do it in payroll, so we're good on that.
Okay.
There's a learning curve there, huh?
That was a big
Little bit.
learning curve.
A little bit.
All right, thank you.
Can I go back real quick and ask one quick question? I mentioned that the athletic program doesn't start, but what about the just extra duty stipend? I'm assuming if school goes back, these people will still be used accordingly.
Correct.
They'll still continue their work as far as, all this high school stuff.
Yeah, so at this point, all the stipends in the salary book are intended to be paid to those that are assigned those. The only exception, academic UIL, those folks get paid after they delivered the coaching of the
They
of the
get paid
event.
in May.
So that's the only exception. All the other stipends are by assignment. So a coach is assigned softball, that's included in their salary for the year. But because academic UIL it depends on them actually coaching those events, and we usually assign those during that season. And at the conclusion of them doing it, then we submit for payment, and then they're paid for it. So my point is, that might be the only exception to my response to your question is, if academic UIL events don't happen,
Right.
then there won't be anybody coaching those events because they get paid after they've delivered. All the other stipends, they're paid because they're assigned that. So that's the only exception. Otherwise, everybody on that stipend list has somebody assigned, and they'll be compensated this year.
Regardless of how
Correct.
the, all of this affects their
Correct.
ability to go and do and whatever,
Yep.
just that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Dale, you have any questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I recommend board approval of the 2020-2021 employee compensation schedule as presented.
We have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve the 2020-2021 employee compensation schedule as presented. Do I have a motion? I have a motion from Mr. Steve Bryant. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from James Mulkey. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We move on to item 8, consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled from the consent agenda?
Nope.
No? Do we need to discuss that bus thing? No, okay, sorry. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Have a motion from Claudia Barrientos. Have a second? Second from Mr. Richard Garza. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 9, adjournment. Motion.
So moved.
Second, we are adjourned. Yeah, unanimous consent. You don't have any more questions?